One thing I've noticed about this group is that we're really short on words. Unsociable sorts.
Actually, they're in the bookstore behind me.
Yes.
The bookstore sale.
Yeah. If today's activity in the bookstore is any indication, we should have made a bigger bookstore.
That's true.
So now it's our opportunity to have some Dharma discussion. Anything about the practice, anything that was said that was either obscure and incomprehensible or inspiring, whatever it is, or any other aspect. You can bring up pretty much any question that you like, though I'll give you fair warning, I don't know much about sports.
Really?
Thank you for calling back to mind and sharing with others the gifts that we got from the kids last night, with how they understood bodhisattva and kindness and how it ripples out. But Miriam also said something that keeps coming to mind for me, which is bodhisattvas are also, and I'm probably paraphrasing it wrong, but something that stuck with me was bodhisattvas are also going about their daily business, and it doesn't always look like bodhisattva activity. And that's, I think, clicked in my mind because of the feeling that I've had when Buddhism is coming from the East to the West. I think the way it spreads and the way it can spread farther is if we recognize bodhisattvas in many of the people around us.
Mm-hmm.
But I just had the inclination to come up and give you the mic so that you could respond, but you've got one. But if you could talk more about how bodhisattvas, the unrecognizable part of their activity, or anything else you want to say about that bodhisattva activity.
Invisible, you mean the ones that I can't see? I'll have Dora and Zopa answer that and while I think about it. And then they will manifest their bodhisattva activity, and then I'll be able to see it. Then I'll have something to talk about. But that's a bit facetious, but it's really true that we overlook things. We overlook very important things on a day-to-day basis, moment-to-moment basis. And we overlook things in both what others do and also what we do. And I think that's something that's important, the aspect of being able to recognize the little things that we do and the profound potential that can open up kind of in any moment. So I think it's a matter of both recognizing, tuning ourselves, you could say. You could say tuning ourselves to hear and see these examples in the activities of others, and also to see it in ourselves. And it's true, I think, that when we read traditional texts about bodhisattvas, they contain stories about great beings who did absolutely mind-boggling things. And if we think that's all there is, then it looks like that's completely divorced from what we're up to. The story of Maitreya, who after years and years and 12 years thinking I just didn't get anywhere, and then finally does this kind of outrageous act of kindness with a dog that has sores on its bodies with maggots. Oh, that's what Bodhisattva is like. That's what bodhicitta is like. Ooh, well, okay. First step: 12 years in a cave with and accepting the hopelessness of my situation. It's like, no, it's a little too much. It's a lot too much. And it's much better if we actually recognize what it is that we do and what others do.
Well, I was thinking about that range, and it seems like we're taught a lot about the bodhisattvas who are, in some way it seems like the definition is sort of, they're like an inch from Buddhahood, but they're not going away. They're voluntarily staying in samsara to serve people, beings. And so those are who some of these stories are about, and that could be the most traditional, definite bodhisattva there is. But then there's also a category of like, those people could be hidden to us. Like, they are bodhisattvas, but we thought they were whatever, might be my mean uncle, whatever, or the homeless person there. And that might be a bodhisattva, then I don't realize it. So that's an interesting perspective. Then we kind of got to be careful about everything, which is challenging. Then I recall, isn't it, especially when you take the bodhisattva vow, but anyway, maybe just even being on the path, we, on the Mahayana path, I'll say, we would say we are bodhisattvas in training. And so that category of beings, it's not quite fair to say we're bodhisattvas, but we're doing our little training activity could be viewed as bodhisattva activity. So that's kind of how I think of a lot of our stories last night are about training and sharing about seeing how other people are manifesting their training. And that's very inspiring because it does feel more doable sometimes than, lighting your finger on fire as an offering to, or offering your leg and then your arm and then but that's good to contemplate those too. Like what's being said there. But anyway, so that's kind of the range I think about.
Yeah, those are good question and really helpful to be reminded of all that. To me, in addition, which has been touched on really, but I like to say explicitly, these views are about training our own mind. So whatever's going on out there, is there an out there? But first. But so my brother-in-law shows up or my best friend shows up, it is very good training for me to see the Buddha nature in both and see them as bodhisattva. Another take on this, which is completely similar, is it's my guru showing up. So when the guru shows up with a challenge of, I don't like this person, they're yelling at me, they're yelling at someone else, that's showing me where my edge is, my edge of practice, because I'm losing my patience, I'm losing my view. Thank you for showing me the edge of my practice, because the easy people in my life don't show me that. You know, if we're kind of adored by everyone around us, that would be a huge problem. We would just grow huge pride and be crazy. Our false ego would just eat that up. So we really need these labeled difficult people who are not difficult to others. Others adore them. There are people who absolutely love my brother-in-law, like my sister. And I love my brother-in-law, but I label him difficult. But he shows me all the time where my puffed up Buddhism, that I think I've got I'm so good at it. And then I'm not. And it's like, oh, thank you. I see. But I have to go home now and get on my cushion. So, makes sense. It's just mind training. So it's quite good to just walk around. One of the classic commentaries is, don't criticize anyone because you don't know if they're a bodhisattva or not. We're really confused in our appearance. We think there's something real out there. But really, it's just my appearance of you. Someone else's appearance is quite different until we reach a more enlightened state. So just assume the enlightened state, things can go better.
There is a traditional saying that Lama Sangsing, I think, repeated to Sonam once. He said, "The world is full of Buddhas and thieves. So respect everyone, but watch your wallet."
Perfect. Be practical. Yeah.
Just a quick response. Zopa, you reminded me of one of the very first teachings I heard from Lama Michael, which is at Monroe, and as if he was walking down to the New Seasons. And as he would pass people, wonder, are you the Buddha? Are you the Buddha?
Yeah. Perfect.
Well, I've been waiting for an opportunity to tell this story, and this is as close as the discussion is going to get to it, so here it is. There are three Christian monks are in a church, and it's in a valley, and no one comes to the church. And one of the monks says to the other, "What are we going to do?" And he says, "Well, there was a wise man on top of the mountain over in the next valley. Let's go ask him." So one of the brothers goes to the wise man. He says, "Nobody comes to the church. We can't figure out what to do about it." And the wise man says, "Well, it's a very godless time, and it's a dark era, and no one has faith, and everyone's just totally taken up with life. So that's just the way it is." He says, "Oh, yes, I suppose you're right." And he prepares to leave, and then the wise man said, just as he's leaving, he says, "Oh, and one other thing. One of the three of you is the Messiah." And so the monk goes back to the church, and the others say, "What did he say? What was his advice?" And the monk says, "Well, he pointed out that these are very dark times, godless times, and no one cares about spiritual things, and that's just the way it is." And they're kind of grump about it. And he said, "Oh, but there's one other thing. He said, one of us is the Messiah." And, they all just let that sit on them for a while. And Brother Philip thinks, well, Brother Andrew could be the Messiah. I mean, he's a very generous guy. He's always giving of himself. And Brother Andrew thinks, Brother William could be the Messiah. Yesterday I saw him stoop to help a cat that was in pain, and I suppose that's possible. So anyway, they are all each looking at the other as the Messiah. And a visitor comes by the church, and he feels the radiance, of what's going on here among these three monks, that they're just treasuring each other. And he goes home and says to a friend, I think maybe we should drop in on the church. And, 3 Sundays later, the place is just crammed to bursting with people, wanting to be part of this. So that's my story.
An excellent one.
Thanks, Phil. That's good.
So it just is about Michael's point that it's about the view
Yeah.
that you take.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
I think I'm dealing with doubt lately, and if you uncover something in yourself that you're trying to loosen and shift, is there something beyond just being aware of it, trying to get more clear on it, that helps to shift patterns? Or is just being aware enough?
I think just being aware could be enough if all the other karmic conditions lined up. And if they don't, there's something else to do. And it depends. I'll use the framework of the three turnings, which are sort of successive ways of going deeper into practice. And from the point of view of the first turning, the first thing that we need to do is get clear in our minds about the kinds of things that generally enhance confusion and the kinds of things that generally diminish confusion. So to actually pay attention to that, get an appreciation for what is actually a cause of suffering. Sort of begin to see that and to hear about it as a general principle, and then to contemplate it in our own experience, and then to, based on some kind of clarity about that, then we can make have some kind of discernment about, well, now that I've seen it, which way should I steer? We can be thoroughly aware that we're driving straight into a boulder. But if we don't steer, have some sense in which direction to steer, we just crash. We crash with great awareness. So, I mean, that's kind of humorous, but it's actually true. And beyond that, then the deeper we go, the more we can start to look into circumstances, the more we can look into how the kind of basic appreciation for kind of taking care of our own business, kind of being kind of clear about how things work, that we can then kind of open more and start to have a deeper sense of our connection with others, a deeper appreciation for our impacts on others, and a deeper appreciation for what actually, how we might be able to behave with less confusion in relationship to others, and it gets deeper going there. And at some point, if all this is really, the momentum is really carrying along like this, then it does come down to, it gets simpler and simpler. It's sort of the clearer our panoramic peripheral view of causes and conditions and things operating, the clearer that becomes, the clearer the sense of our connection with others and how that all plays out. The clearer that becomes, the more we can actually get back down to the simplicity of, yes, it is just awareness. But it happens, we actually have to have some clarity, sort of a sense of panoramic clarity about all the issues related to ethics and compassion and all those things. And then it can go back down to just simple presence and awareness. But it needs, the context actually is really important.
I just want to add a little bit. In that first turning, you can simplify that to renouncing, seeing and renouncing that suffering. So, for example, in the book Creation and Completion, John McContrell says in that first turning, you want to see the suffering in it for yourself and for others. Like, okay, I'm always angry or I'm always irritated. You want to see that. And then you want to say, I don't want to do this anymore. You be kind of firm with it as though it's quite solid. That becomes the problem with it too, but you want to face it and avert it, okay? Reject it in a way. And then in the middle turning, there are antidotes to apply that are conceptual. So it could be Tonglen. It could be, I see my shtick is anger, so I want to work on patience. I want to think about how good patience is and cultivate it conceptually. That's more in that middle turning. Or I'm going to do Tonglen for all the people who are impatient or who have this addiction. And then in the third turning, you go to the klesha, that emotion, the self, the guru I'm calling in to help, all same nature, emptiness, pure, non-dual, open, boundless potential, awareness, that ultimate awareness. So knowing those three can kind of help us. Which step am I ready for? You know, and with different situations, you're going to need different ones. You know, like something may be very easy to go straight to awareness about because of, as Bill said, the karma and conditions of that moment. Oh, I see, right? This is nothing. I'm just doing some big old thing here. Oh yeah, boom, nothing. Like a time when I got so angry with someone and I went in a room by myself because I thought I might hurt them. And I was just in there like, you know, throwing pillows and yelling. And all of a sudden I just saw, poof, it was just a comedy almost. And I burst out laughing, going, wow, what was that? And it was poof. But other things like persistent habits of mind, I have to go at over and over again, you know. But the trick is that going at it over and over can start making it too solid. So every once, make the self solid and the problem solid. So every once in a while you want to go, what Lama Zopa used to say, when you think you have a problem, say to yourself, this is not a problem. Just that, because it just spins it towards that. Oh, I thought it was, now it's not. So there's many of those middle turning antidotes. Yeah.
Did I get lost? Was the question about, you said doubt?
Can Buddhism actually help? And then I get stuck in, I guess, a simplistic idea of it's just, you know, sitting and being aware and thinking, how the heck is that going to help?
Okay. Because I was trying to think, I just wanted to make clear that doubt is not a klesha to say, oh, I don't want to have doubt.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not, doubt is not like at least in general, maybe there's some kind of doubts that could be in the category of, I don't know, aversion, attraction, and ignorance, but in general, I mean, doubt is worth looking into and, you know, working with in ways not necessarily considering it an enemy.
There's one category of doubt that's considered problematic, and that's doubt about whether or not things are consequential. So it doesn't matter. This is a problem. We do actually have to take seriously the impacts of our thoughts, speech, and activity, and that to have some confidence that even if we don't say, well, even if we have doubt about is this traditional map exactly a correct explanation about how all this works, but it's very difficult to practice without some sense of confidence that what we do, say, or think actually has impacts. It's consequential in a kind of a serious way.
I just wanted to share from my understanding with the teachings that doubt is one of the slipperiest of the obscurations, because we can tend to believe it. So we doubt that all this sitting will bring any change or shift in our life, so we stop doing it. And doubt, there's just more of a subtle identification with it, or it could appear that way. So again, in my understanding, it seems like when doubts come up, again, it's bringing a spacious awareness to what is the doubt about, but finding that sense of presence or awareness and noticing, oh, this is doubt, but I always understood it as it can be a very formidable obscuration.
There are two sides to that. One is exactly as you describe it, though I would flip it more. It'd say that confidence in the practice is actually a critical piece. Finding your way into confidence, and without finding one's way into confidence, things kind of fall apart. The one way that doubt is spoken about in many traditions as a positive thing is to cause you to look carefully, to really check it out, and to not just accept something, because that's one of the our practice can become just an idea about what's the right thing to do if we if we don't actually really check it out and go into our experience. But Michael often talks about confidence, and he would frame it more in terms of confidence than in terms of avoiding the slippery slope of doubt. But without the confidence, things will fall apart. We'll just kind of slide away.
I have a big interest in how to translate these teachings to our everyday accessible reality. So it seems like the bridge to confidence could be whatever skillful means comes in, like when we have a pattern going on that, oh, we're not feeling that confidence in the teachings. I mean, I'm referring more to the teachings because it seems like this was your question. How can this sitting here, alleviate doubt? And I guess that's perhaps where the skillful means of faith might come in, or others' experience of, strengthening that sense of confidence or strengthening that sense of awareness to be able to notice where the doubts are coming in, that could be such a veil over our direct experience. Seems like skillful means is a very important bridge.
I think it's important to acknowledge that we'll each kind of make our way through these kinds of questions in our own terms. And one of the things in doing that, I think it's important we will put certain kinds of understandings together, and those understandings will allow us to do kind of whatever's next. But I think it's important to realize that our understanding will become more refined if we allow it to become more refined. And that's, so I don't know how many provisional understandings I had that I thought were really, I'd got it, before I realized, oh, it's all kind of provisional understanding along the way. And then that allowed me to play more freely with the kind of enthusiasm that came out from thinking, oh, I see how this is starting to work together. And so I can play with that enthusiasm and focus my attention and my practice without starting to build something that's kind of a castle in the rearview mirror, and spending my time kind of looking backwards at this thing, my understanding. So finding that place where we can have a fresh relationship with what's coming up is important, and have that confidence and not just be kind of lost in kind of, I don't know, how do I actually know anything about this? And in that, it's very good to actually talk with people. Talk with people that seem to have some sense of where you feel some kind of rapport. It's like, oh, actually, we seem to be kind of talking the same language at an ordinary level about experience and about the Dharma. And then it's possible to check in like that. So I think that's a very helpful piece. Miriam.
Excuse me. Following up on this, I have a question about when I work with people, I help them to realize that behavior change can be really challenging. And of course, that's very limited to this lifetime, and it's very relative, right? And I generally tell them what is effectively an aspect of my personal experience, but also seems to be borne out in what I've been told from other people, and that is when there's a behavior I don't want, it's very important to acknowledge it, first of all. And then what happens seems to be I realize I did that behavior like a couple of weeks later, or I was completely unconscious about it until somebody told me. And then slowly over time it gets to be like the next day, and then it's like a few hours later, and then it's a minute after, and then it's like during it, which is really unpleasant, watching yourself doing something you don't want to do, but it does happen. And then it's a few minutes before, and I have a choice at that point, and I can actually do something about it. That seems very relative to me, but I'm wondering if there's something in Buddhism that relates to that, or it reflects that, or am I just missing something, or is perhaps Buddhism doesn't speak to that specifically, or can you tell me if there's some cross bridge to go?
What's wrong with relative? No, there isn't anything wrong with relative, and the process that you describe is that's classic. Yeah, and particularly the kind of the last steps that you were talking about, in terms of the piece of sort of having a sense of, here I am. I'm starting to recognize I am driving the car, as opposed to sort of blaming it on somebody who happens to be driving badly. It's not me. It's just I don't know why we ran into that tree. I have no idea. But the more we have a sense that what's going on in our experience, there's a creative aspect to it. It is actually kind of a creative dynamic, and the creative play of that. That's kind of a big deal, and that's actually a spot where also not only the insight aspect, but also the compassion, loving kindness and compassion aspect look very, very different. That starts to look very different. If we think of kind of compassion as this thing that might come up if we happen to kind of come out of our dull state of dreaminess and notice that something's going on, and then we react to it. Or we happen to only kind of check in with, if something starts to go really, really bad, and then we think, maybe I ought to check with my awareness what's going on. It's different. The more we get back to the point of actually, I am this creative thing is going on. And the more we can then look and maintain some kind of space of awareness about just what's unfolding, that things are unfolding. And we can also have a sense that actually meeting all that experience, whatever it is, with an outlook, kind of an embrace of loving kindness and compassion, that it becomes a different thing. And that's actually, when we're talking about renunciation, transformation, and recognition, if we actually want to step all the way into the recognition piece, we have to be meeting what's arising with that kind of deep insight. We meet that with a deep insight, and in that, then the lack of confusion that goes along with that, according to the theory, I'll tell you when I get there. Then we meet circumstances as they arise, sort of naturally with skillful means, in a naturally skillful way. So, but but the progression that you describe is that's how it works. It kind of at a practical level, it can't work another way. And the first turning is kind of going, wow, I've been trying the same thing over and over again and miraculously getting the same results. And they haven't been so good. So let me actually become clear about this. Let me investigate it till I become clear about it. So that's where that actually starts. And when you're saying, what I was doing last week or last year or through that entire relationship that just fell apart, that kind of reflection is that we can use kind of all levels of it, but it really that first level of reflection is how am I causing my suffering and confusion? How am I impacting others? And then that will motivate us. The clearer we are, that will motivate us to look, kind of check more frequently, and then we go back in that time frame that you described more articulately and more succinctly than I'm doing.
Could you just repeat those three phases? It was renunciation,
transformation, and recognition.
Thank you.
You could say they're all doing the same thing, but with just gradually fewer moving parts. But it depends upon the kind of the recognition actually doesn't arise in a deep way without the kind of the more panoramic appreciation of circumstances that comes in as we develop our practice. Peter.
This is just a technique question. So I've read some descriptions when doing the meditation that one focuses on a point in front of you, like 12 to 18 inches in front of you. So a lot of times I think I end up getting tunnel vision because I'm focusing on, and some people close their eyes, some people open their eyes, and so I get tunnel vision and I'm looking far off. So I started to do that. It was interesting because, your visual field is quite different, but I'm wondering, and this, I guess, is my question, if there is any, information in the scientific literature of an increase in cross-eyedness in meditators.
I think the time that I made Boka Rinpoche laugh more than any other time is when I was bringing up a question like this. And because sometimes you see, like, you bring your gaze to this spot that's just kind of sort of, you described it 12 to 18 inches. Sometimes it's described even closer. I said, Rinpoche, I've asked about this, but not gotten a clear answer. So I hear this instruction, but when I look around, I don't notice that you're looking cross-eyed. He thought it was hysterical. But there's something about, it's more a matter of what the mind does than what the eyes do. And there is actually a formal instruction in one tradition of, you bring your attention to basically a spot in space. You think, well, how do I look at space? It's like, well, how do I not look at space? But but just to rest your attention in the space in front. So in that same way, and when we bring the attention in, there is kind of a collectedness. So in that, the collectedness starts to have some energy to it that's not there if we're kind of just sort of spaced out staring. Kind of the energy just kind of goes out. But yes, but it's more a matter of what you do with the mind than the eyes.
Is that one quick thing? I mean, a lot of things could be said, but not needed. That was good. I was just remembering one thing Ken MacLeod once said was, the point is to forget about your eyes. Like, so what you can do to have a relaxed gaze, if you're too distracted by that, maybe close your eyelids halfway, or if you need to, close them all the way. But the point is to not be sucked out and distracted and caught up in what you're seeing. So it's a point of relaxing. So if it happens to be relaxing on a blurry cushion in front of your eyes, that's okay. Rather than getting quite hung up on exactly where the focus might be.
Yeah.
Well, from the relaxation, I think, you might not have a clear view of that, which might mean that your focus is closer. Therefore, the farther away thing looks blurry. But sort of like not worrying about it too much and achieving the intended consequence is more to the point.
Especially if we have a particular object of meditation, then that exact point of just forget about it, like, is not a big deal. It's just, you're hearing things too, but you're not trying to stick your fingers in your ears to shut things down. It's more a matter, in the midst of all that experience that arises, being able to place the attention. One of the things that we can actually investigate what goes on with the visual field, and I think that's actually a very good thing. It's very good to be very curious about all our sense fields, to really meet the experience of that. And one of the things that I think it's fairly easy to discover with the visual field is the distinction between what we're actually seeing, what's actually the visual data that's actually coming in, and our memories and projections about what we're seeing. Because right now, if I'm looking at you, in my mind, I know I'm seeing Laura. But if I actually if I just look at the visual information that's coming in at the moment, it could be almost anything. It's kind of sort of just a vague bit of color and a little bit of texture. And so there is a way that when the way that we get distracted by things in the visual field is actually by the projection of memory. We're actually lost in memory about what we think we're seeing. So it's another reason, just kind of like don't get wrapped up in it, and whatever way, unless you're really going to go, what on earth is going on with this visual field? I've never stopped to check it out. Right.
I have seen some of that where, you're kind of saying, well, is that the decay on my rods and cones, or is that some, molecules of air, the air rises and it's just, heat. You see the air molecules rise because it's from heat. But you have this heuristic thinking that does pattern recognition, and instantly you're going, yeah, it's my rods and cones, but it's Bill. So, Dora.
Yeah. That the kind of the analytical piece of it can come up since we know that stuff. We've been spoiled by learning these things, but the part that I'm talking about in terms of the investigating is not the stories that come up. Those can be helpful actually. We can use that information, but if we use it to go back and really just see what the experience is, that's the main thing there. So, but I see the clock, and I recognize that if it says 4 after, I've gone over. So.
By this virtue
may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Ben.
See y'all soon.